Welcome back to the logs. I am the mysterious Namet, and today we are opening a file that might make you cover every rear reflector of surface the mirror before you doubt. We trust mirrors implicitly. We assume that the laws of physics are constant, the light travels instantaneously, and that the face looking back at us is simply bouncing light. Nothing more, but there is a theory that such mirrors are not surfaces, but windows, and sometimes the thing on the R side just tired of mimicking us. If you want to keep these locks open, leave a like and subscribe to Grim Reality Locks. Let me know in the comments if you have ever seen your reflection move on its own. Stay safe. Now, let us begin. Part 1. The Micro Latency. I always been a creature of logic. As a freelance backend developer specializing in legacy code repair, my entire life is built around codes and ethics. If a server crashes, there is a reason. If a line of code fails, there is a missing bracket or a syntax error. Theories no magic, only broken logic that has not been found yet. That is why he took the contract for the month of Mover. I needed to rebuild a sprawling database for a logistic company, and I needed absolute silence to do it. I rented a short-term stay in Washington State, nip in the rainforest of the Olympic Peninsula. The listing called it an architectural marvel. It was essentially a glass box, a modernist cube of steel and floor tiling windows pitched on a mossy ridge overlooking a valley of black pines. In the photos, it looked pristine and peaceful. In reality, it was living inside a camera lens. I arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. The sky was a bruised purple, hanging low and heavy with that specific type of typic northwest rain that does not fall so much as purposed purple. The air smelled of wet cedar, decaying needles, and ozone. Inside, the house was stark, polished black granite floors, chrome fixtures, and glass. So much glass. The dying philosophy seemed to be that the outside should be the decoration, so the interior was minimal. The issue with a glass house in the middle of a forest is that when the sun goes down, the windows stop being windows. When the interior lights are on and the forest is pitch black, the glass becomes a mirror. You were not looking out at the trees anymore, you were looking at yourself, reflected in a big drop of infinite darkness. Everywhere I turned, the kitchen, the living room, the hallway, saw myself living in peripheral vision. For the first 3 days, it was fine. I worked 16 hours a day, fueled by black coffee and the rhythmic drumming of rising limits to wrath. I was entering that flow state where time dissolves. I was tired, yes, but it was a product of exhaustion. The first incident happened on Friday night, or rather, early Saturday morning. It was exactly 12:15 a.m. I had been staring at a wall of hexadecimal code for 6 hours straight. My eyes were burning, dry and gritty. I pushed my chair back, teeth sound scraping loudly against the granite floor in the silence of the house. I needed water. I needed to wash my face. I walked to the main bathroom. It was a sleek, cavernous face with slate tiles and a massive, floating vanity mirror that stretched at the interval. The lighting was recessed lights, cool and clinical. I turned on the faucet. The water was ice cold, drawn directly from a well deep in the bedrock. I cupped my hands, splashing the freezing water onto my face, gasping slightly at the shock. I rubbed my eyes, trying to message away the strain of the comfort screen. Then, I grabbed the towel and patted my face dry. I lowered the towel in the elective edge of the mirror. Had is when the wool tilted. In the mirror, I saw myself. I looked exhausted. My skin was pale under the harsh light, and there were dark circles under my eyes. I was wearing my gray hoodie. I leaned in closer to inspect a bloodshot vessel in my left eye. I blinked in the mirror. My reflection blinked, but it happened after I did. It was not alarm delay. It was infinitesimally small. If I had to guess, being someone who works with server latency, I would say it was maybe 200 milliseconds, a fifth of a second. Just enough to be perceptible. Just enough trigger a primal alarm bell in the lighter part of my brain. I froze. I stared at the glaze. My reflection stared back, perfectly still. You need sleep, I whispered to myself. My voice sounded flat in the tile room. I reasoned that it was a processing error in my own brain. Visually, it happens when you are sleep deprived. Your optic nerve sends the signal, but your osseous brain takes a moment to assemble the picture. That ought to be it. I leaned back, tossing the towel onto the counter. As I did, I watched the mirror like a hawk. I moved my hand fast. A quick wave, the reflection way back. It looked instantaneous. I let out a breath. I died, not know I was holding. Get a grip. I met her. I turned to leave the bathroom. I reached for the light switch, but just as my fingers brushed the plastic toggle, my eyes flicked back to the glass one last time. I turned my head to the right to look at the tide of the door. My reflection turned its head to the right, but it did so clearly, only a moment after I had already completed the movement. I stopped it. My hand hovered over the light switch. The cold water on my face suddenly felt like sweat. This was not a hallucination. I snapped my head back to face the mirror. A reflection snapped back. Black. I stood there, hurt hammering against my eyes. I decided to test it properly. I raised my right hand slowly. The reflection raised its right hand left. Technically in perfect sync, I moved my fingers. Perfect sync. Then, I tried a rapid erratic movement. I feinted left, then jerked my head right. There it was. The reflection feinted left. But as I jerked right, the image on the glass blurred for a microsecond, like a carpet 505 buffering to derive harboring. It was lagging. The physics of light were failing in my bathroom. I backed away slowly, not taking my eyes off the glass. I felt a surge of nausea, a motion sickness caused by the disconnect between my proprioception, my intentional sense of body position, and the visual field emission in the mirror. I turned off the light, plunging the bathroom into darkness. I slammed the door shut and back and bailed the hallway. The hallway was lined with windows. Outside, the storm was picking up. The wind was howling through the fir trees. I walked back to the living room, intending to sit down, maybe pour a drink. I needed to calibrate. I needed to convince myself that I was having a mid-stroke or a migraine aura. I walked past the sliding glass doors that led to the patio. The interior lights were dim, but the reflection in the patio door was clear, crisp, and I quashed it. I stopped. I walked back. I stood in front of the sliding glass door. I raised my hand. The reflection raised its hand, but this time the delay was worse. It was almost half a second. It was Sly watching a live news broadcast with a bad satellite connection. I waved on beat. The reflection waved. A cold dread wished over me. Heaver than the rain outside. It wasn't just the bathroom mirror. It was every reflective surface in the house, and the lack was getting worse. Part 2. Desynchronization. I did not sleep the night. I sat on the couch in the center of the living room, as far away from the windows as possible. I turned on every single light in the house, trying to banish the reflective properties. The glass, but the darkness outside. The windows remained black mirrors, reflecting the open plan living space back at me from every angle. I spent the next hour simply watching. I set a timer on my phone. I would raise my arm, hit the lap button, and then wait for the reflection in the far window to raise its arm. At 3 a.m., the delay was 0.4 seconds. At 3:30 a.m., the delay was 0.8 seconds. By 4:15 mm, the delay was a full-on 0.5 seconds. It is impossible to describe the nausea this caused. I imagine speaking and hearing your own voice echo back 2 seconds later. It destroys your ability to think. Now imagine moving and seeing your own body lag behind you. It broke my brain. I felt like I was moving through thick syrup. Epithel, the air was empty. I tried to document. I unlocked my phone and opened the camera app. I pointed the lens at the large sliding glass door. On the phone screen, the room looked normal. The furniture was air. The rain streaking the outside of the glass was there, but where my reflection should have been. The screen was a mess of digital artifacts. It looked like a crumpled video file. Blocks of green and purple pixels scrambled over the shape of my body. The camera's autofocus motor whirred aggressively, buzzing in and out. Unable to lock onto the subject, the software could not process what it was seeing. It treated the reflection like a hole in the data. I threw the phone onto the cushion beside me. Technology was useless here. I needed water HN. My throat was parched from the dry recycle out the house, but the kitchen was surrounded by black granite countertops and stainless steel plants. A hall of mirrors. I forced myself to stand up. I walked to the kitchen island. I kept my eyes down, staring at the matte floor tiles. I grabbed a glass. I filled it from the tap. I made the mistake of looking up. Directly in front of me was the toaster. It was a vintage-style chrome appliance. Highly polished. The curved surface stored the arm, touching it like a funhouse mirror. I saw my distorted face in the chrome. I was standing still, gripping the glass of water. The reflection in the toaster was not standing still. It was moving. It was slowly, methodically, tilting its head from side to side, stretching its neck. I dropped the glass. It shattered on the floor, shards of crystal exploding across the granite. I jumped back, my heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I looked at the toaster again. The reflection had stopped moving. It was staring at me, but something was wrong. I looked down at itself. I was wearing a blue flannel shirt over a gray shirt. I had buttoned the flannel up to my chin because the house was drafty. I looked back in the trom. The reflection was wearing the blue flannel shirt, but in the reflection, the shirt was unbuttoned, and the gray shirt underneath was wrapped. The lack was no longer just temporal. I was divergent. The reality in the reflection was drifting away from my reality. It was not just an echo anymore. It was becoming a separate broadcast. I backed away from the kitchen, my boots crunching on the broken glass. I didn't care. I knitted to choke out. I ran to the front door. It was a heavy, solid wood door, the only thing in the house that wasn't glass. I grabbed the handle and yanked it open. The wine hit me like a physical blow. The rain was torrential, slashing sideways. The cold was socking. I fumbled in my pocket for my car keys. My car, a reliable SUV, was parked just 10 years away on the gravel drive. I ran to it, slipping on the wet stones. I jammed the key into the door fob past stop working days of went through my soul. It driver's seat. I slammed the door, sealing myself inside the metal box. I felt safe for exactly 3 seconds. And I looked at the rearview mirror. It was empty. I was sitting in the driver's seat. I could see my hands on the steering wheel. I could feel the cold of the seat into my back. But in the rectangular glass of the rearview mirror, the driver's seat was empty. I was not reflected. I screamed. I shoved the key into the ignition and twisted it. Nothing. Not a click. Not a sputter. The dashboard remained completely dark. The electronics were dead. I tried aim. I twisted the keys so hard I thought the metal would snap. Silent. And slowly, an image began to fade into the rearview mirror. It wasn't me. It was the interior of the house I had just left. The living room. I was sitting in my car, but the mirror was showing me a view from inside the house. And in the center of that reflection, standing in the middle of the living room, was me. But it wasn't me. It was the other me, the on with the unbuttoned shirt. It was standing there, facing the front door, facing where I had run out. And it was smiling, a wide, toothy, impossible smile that stretched the skin of my face too tight. It raised a hand and waved. Park tree, the bower of hens. I scrambled out of the car. I couldn't stay in there with that mirror. The small, enclosed space felt like a fudge. I tumbled onto the wet gravel, the rain instantly soaking my clothes. I had a choice: stay outside in the freezing storm, in the pitch black of the Olympic forest, or go back into the glass box. The woods were impenetrable. The nearest town was 20 miles away down a logging road that was light was out. I had no flashlight, no working phone. I looked back at the house. The lights were still on. It glowed like a beacon in the storm. I crawled back to the front door. I told myself I would just stay in the hallway. No mirrors in the hallway, just white walls. I entered and locked the heavy wooden door behind me. I slid down the wall, sitting on the floor, hugging my knees. I closed my eyes. If I didn't look, it couldn't hurt me. That is the logic of a child, but it was all I had. I sat there for what felt like an hour. The only sound was the rain and the wine. Then I heard it. Tink. A sharp, clear sound, like a client tapping against a window. I kept my eyes closed. It's a branch, I whispered. It's just the branch hitting the glass. Ting, ting, bing. It was rhythmic, deliberate. It was coming from the living room. I opened my eyes. Didn't help it. The silence between the taps worse than the sound itself. I crawled to the edge of the hallway and peered into the living room. The room was empty. The furniture sat undisturbed. The massive floor-tolling windows were black slabs against the night. Ting! I saw it on the far window, the one overlooking the valley. Something was tapping, but it wasn't a branch from the outside. A finger was pressing against the glass from the inside. I stood up, trembling. The figure was attached to a hand. The hand was attached to an arm, but there was no body. It was just a reflection floating in the black glass, but it was two-dimensional. It looked like it was trapped inside the pane of glass itself, and the rest of the fire stepped into the frame of the window. It was the reflection, the unbuttoned shirt. It wasn't mimicking me anymore. I was standing 20 feet away, crouching by the wall. The reflection was standing right up against the glass, staring directly at me across the room. It raised his hand and tapped it again. Ting. The sound came from the surface of the glass. My breath hitched, fizz a crease, a barrier, lie bounces off. Matters not. Pass through. But the sound was physical. The reflection was interacting with the barrier. It leaned its forehead at the glass. I saw the condensation from its fob of the window pane. Reflections stub, not breathe. Reflections do not create heat. It opened its mouth. I saw the movement of its lips. It was speaking. I couldn't hear the words, but it could read the lips. It was saying the same thing over and over again. Let me out. No, that wasn't it. I squinted, stepping involuntarily closer. Let me in. It smiled again. That terrible, tight-skinned smile. Hand. It nigh something that made my me buckle. It raised both fists and hammered them against the glass. Todd. The entire window pane fitted. The sound was heavy, dull, and violent. Todd. Tard. It was trying to break the glass, but it wasn't trying to break out to the exterior. It was trying to break the surface tension of the reflection. It was trying to break into the room. I scrambled backward, knocking over a vase on a side table. It crushed, but the sound was drowned out by the pounding on the window. Todd. A crack appeared. It started at the center of the window, right where the reflection's piston struck. A spiderweb fracture. Glowing white in the darkness, glass does not crack from a reflection. That is impossible, but the crack was there. And it was spreading. I turned to run. I didn't know where. The bedroom. The bathroom. No, the bathroom was a trap. The guest room. It had small windows, blinds. I sprinted down the hallway. As I ran, I passed the decorative mirrors lining the corridor. In every single one of them, I saw it. I saw the reflection running, but it wasn't running away. It was running parallel to me. I was keeping pace, sprinting through the glass world. Leaping from my mirror to the next like a strobe light effect, I burst into the guest room and slammed the door. I fumbled for the lock, twisting it shut. I backed away to the center of the room. This room had one window, a small square one covered by heavy wooden blinds. I had kept them closed since I arrived. Safe, I wheezed. Safe. I stared at the blind. Slowly, agonizingly slowly, the slats of the blinds began to turn. I was touching them. The little plastic wand that controls the tilt was spinning on its own. The slats throated, opening up the view to the black glass behind them. I screamed, "Stop it!" The blinds stopped. They were fully open. The black glass of the window was perfectly reflective, and the reflection was there. It was pasted right up against the glass, so close that its nose was flattened, white and bloodless. Its eyes were wide, manic, and rolling in its head. It wasn't smiling anymore. It looked hungry. It raised a hand. It pointed a finger at me. It pointed at the light switch on the wall next to me. I shook my head. No, the reflection nodded. It mimicked my voice, but the sound didn't come from its mouth. It came from the air around me, a distorted, elaborate version of my own voice. Lies out. Part 4. The swap. I stood there, paralyzed by the sheer terror of hearing my ill voice echo from the empty air. The reflection the Enna was pressing at space exists. The glass decay. Its fierce, the character. It pointed at the light switch again. Lies out. I shook my head violently. I backed away, stumbling over the corner of the guest bed. I fell onto the mattress, scrambling backward until my spine hit the headboard. The reflection did not move. I stared, and then it started to tap again. Tink, ting, ting. But this time, the sound was different. It wasn't coming from the window. It was coming from the mirror on the back of the bedroom door. I with my head around. The full-length mirror, mounted on the inside of the door I had just locked, was vibrating. And in that mirror, there was in their reflection. This one was different. It wasn't menacing. It wasn't smiling. It was crying. It was me, the real me, our A-list, the me I remembered being 5 minutes ago. It was wearing the gray hoodie. It looked terrified. It was pouting on the glass from the inside, mouthing words you can't hear. I looked back at the window. The smiling reflection was gone. I looked at the mirror on the door. The terrified reflection was still there. Frantic, and then the lights flickered. A sudden sharp darkness. The power grid in the folly must have surged. For a split second, the room was plunged absolutely black. In that darkness, I felt something shift, a profound disorientation. Live vertigo, but infinitely worse. It felt like falling through the floor. The light snapped back on. I blinked. I was spinning in front of the bedroom door. My hand was on the doorknob. I looked down. I was wearing the blue flannel shirt. It was unbuttoned. My gray shirt was torn. I froze. I looked up at the mirror on the door. Inside the glass, staring back at me with wide, white eyes, was a figure in a gray hoodie. It was screaming silent, pounding on the glass from the other side. It was me. I took a step back. The figure in the mirror mimics the movement perfectly, but with a delay, a horrible, lacking delay. I raised my hand to my face. These can fall. Wong, too smooth, too cold, like polished ceramic. I looked as the mirror acted mirror. The figure, the real male slipping now, sliding down the glass in defeat. I felt as my tuck at the corners of my mouth. I didn't went too small. I was terrified, but the muscles in my face moved on their own, stretching wide, exposing too many teeth. I wasn't in control anymore. I was a passenger in my own body, or rather, I was the reflection now. And the thing that had been in the mirror was me. I reached for the light switch. My hand moved with a jerky, unnatural motion. Lies. Out. I heard my own voice say, calm and devoid of fear. I flicked the switch. Darkness. And in the dark, I heard the sound of glass shattering. Not from the mirror, but from inside my own head. I woke up the next morning in my car. The sun was shining. The storm had passed. The car started on the first try. I drove away from that glass house and never looked back. But sometimes, late night, when I brushed my teeth, I catch a glimpse of thing in the mirror, just for a split second. A flash of fear in my own eyes. A silent scream. I know that somewhere in a cold, dark room filled with mirrors, part of me is still trapped, potting on the glass, waiting for the reflection to let him out. So, the next time you look in a mirror, pay close attention. Bling, wave, move quickly. Because if you see even the slightest hesitation, so not look back, wreck every mirror you own. Because once the lack starts, it is only a matter of time before you switch place. If you want to keep these locks open, leave a like and subscribe to Grim Rebel at Lax. Let me know in the comments which story kept you up tonight. Stay safe.